Do you find homeowners maybe more apt to renovate their house now instead of selling and buying something else they might want? Because inventory is still an issue, right? And that's some of the stuff we've seen the market in the last 3-4 weeks, pick up a little steam because we have not solved the supply issue, right? And the inventory hasn't sprung onto the market yet.
Yeah, and we're seeing multiple offers right now.
Welcome to Real Talk with Gary. If you are listening to this show, that means you are either searching or ready to make a financial change in your life. This show is not only about real estate investing, but also the importance of mindset and the roadmap to a better, healthier life. Learn the daily routines of successful entrepreneurs and the latest market strategies and trends to stay ahead of the curve. Ready for some down-to-earth, north of the border Canadian talk? Here's your host, Gary Hibbert.
All right, welcome back. And today I've got Victoria. She is the founder of BuildX Design, an architecture studio based out of Toronto. And she specializes in housing densification projects as well as the design of high-end commercial and retail spaces. Now, she began her real estate investment journey by buying her first property, listen to this, at the age of 19. And then since then, she's invested in a variety of projects, including duplexes, triplexes, apartment conversions, and also severances. And on today's show, we dive into the process of involved with creating a 3 or 4 unit conversion from a single family home. Also, one of the hot topics, Build 23, and the pros and cons of really what that means for investors. We touch on the building code, the important steps you should do before you close on the property. And then also, which is actually really cool, is that Victoria right now is managing the design and work for one of my own personal clients that picked up a property in Toronto, and they're closing on it soon, and they will be converting that from a single family home into a 3, possibly even a 4 unit property. Now, if you want to join us on one of our upcoming property tours. So typically we do our property tours out in Peterborough or Durham region. We haven't done one in Toronto before. And so this is something that we're starting new for Smart Home Choice. And so if you want to see this actual property and the conversion process, check out the property tour. You just go to SmartHomeChoice.ca and it'll probably, I think it's in May. I don't have the exact date. I should, but I am not restarting this intro. All right. But it is in May. Just go to SmartHomeChoice.ca. You'll find it if you click on events. Also too, if you're looking to get some mentorship from myself and Darlene, we keep a very small, tight group. And our next one starts in September. You can set up a discovery call with us. The discovery call is absolutely free. And last but not least, if you're enjoying the podcast, I always ask, please leave a short review. That really helps other people find this show if you're also enjoying it as well. And then do me one favor as well. If you do end up leaving a review, and it's actually, I shouldn't ask you to do a favor, but if you do, one of the things that I'm going to probably start doing with any of the reviews that you guys leave is I'm just going to start reading them. I'll start reading them on the show, give you guys a little shout out, and just show you my appreciation for continuing to listen to myself and the different guests that I have on here. All right. And with that, sit back, relax, and enjoy today's show with myself, Victoria. Oh, and I also had Quinn in the studio. All right. Talk to you guys later. Bye. Today's show brought to you by Rent Panda. Rent Panda helps landlords go from listing to lease without wasted time or headaches along the way. Rent Panda provides the do-it-yourself landlord, which is an online platform where you can list your property for free, post your ad on multiple platforms, see tenant profiles, message tenants, schedule showings, get credit checks, build leases quickly and easily. Rent Panda also caters to the more passive landlord who needs to find a tenant, doing all of the leasing work, so all you have to do is sit back and get the best tenants presented to you. Victoria.
Hey, Gary.
How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good to see you. Glad you're in the studio here with me, Mr. Quinton.
Yes, sir. Always great to be here.
Yeah. So how was life, Victoria? How are things?
Busy, working on a lot of different projects with investor clients, homeowners. So it's a good sign, right? Like, yeah. I think we hear a lot about, the recession or a looming recession, but I'm staying busy, and
that's good.
That's good.
But you must have seen a slowdown though. Like when, I guess I'd be like, maybe late last year, mid last year. Would you say mid last year?
Yeah, I would say the slowdowns maybe with homeowners, right? Like I think a lot of homeowners are renovating with their HELOCs. So naturally, with interest rates rising, fewer homeowners are looking to do large renovations, the ones that we'd see during COVID, where you're expanding your living space and looking to, renovate, make it beautiful because you're staying at home for the most of your time. So
Right.
fewer of those projects.
Okay, hold on. So we just got like right into what you do as opposed to doing an introduction of like what you do. So why don't we maybe kind of back up a little bit? Why don't you let everybody know your background, what you do, and maybe even like why you got into it, and then we'll go from there.
Sure. Yeah. So I guess for me, I'm a licensed architect, also a real estate investor, and I would say educator as well. So, right out of high school, I went to architecture school, University of Waterloo, kind of went through that path, got education, got my master's, that was kind of like the typical path, and, was on my way to becoming an architect. But, along the way, an architect is actually not the best paid profession.
It isn't?
No, not at all. Like most people might think so, but
It sounds like it is. Like every time I hear the word architect, I'm like, okay, man, these guys are making money because of designing things. Like, I think of like the CN Tower.
Right.
Or something like that just looks very nice or beautiful, or those glass buildings you see downtown. Mm-hmm. Those guys don't get paid big money?
No, not at all. Like, I think
What?
it's because of that, right? Like, people have this glamorous idea of what an architect is. You're working on these beautiful buildings. It looks so fun, looks so glamorous. And a lot of people want to do it. Like, I hear lots of comments being like, oh, that's a career I wanted to do. And if I go back, I'd love to be an architect.
Mm-hmm.
But it's because it's known as this profession, like, you need to love it to do it. And as a result, you don't get paid a lot because a lot of people are in it because they love it, and then it's not truly reflected in their salary.
Right.
So I think that's part of my journey into thinking, what are some of these other things. But, I do love architecture. I love renovations. And naturally, that's what kind of keeps me doing a lot of the different things within the same space. But I did, as I got further into the profession, some questions of like, oh, like, how do I sustain my life? And, is this truly a life I want to continue to live? And it's kind of balancing your career. It's a ton of hours when you work in the corporate world of architecture. And then at the same time, you're not paid a lot. So then you're thinking like, this is not the life I imagined. So.
Right. So now, listen, I'm probably going to ask a bunch of silly questions today because this is like what you do is outside of, I think my area of expertise. I don't know about UQ, but like, is there a difference between like an architect and an engineer? Is that a silly question?
No, I think there's like a lot of overlap sometimes with some of the work we do. So not a silly question at all.
Okay.
I would say engineers, there's a lot of different types of engineers. So it really depends on the scope of work. So there's structural engineers, mechanical, electrical engineers, civil engineers dealing with the ground and like servicing and whatnot. So, if you're bringing on an engineer, it depends on the type of service that you need help with. But it also depends on the size of the project. So architects are generally knowledgeable about all these building systems and structure, but only to probably a certain level. So if you're working on a small project, you may be able to get an architect to do everything for you. Mm-hmm. But when you get into larger buildings, then typically you're getting every specialized consultant. So you'll have an individual architect that oversees everything, and then you'll have a mechanical engineer, a structural engineer, electrical engineer, and they'll all be dedicated to their discipline. And the architect is the prime consultant that kind of manages, oversees everybody, and makes sure that it's an integrated design.
Got it. Okay, so then when we're dealing with real estate investors here, mm-hmm. they're bringing in who? You, the architect?
Yes, potentially. Or they could work with a BCIN designer, and they tend to specialize in smaller buildings. So Typically, it's 600 square meters or less. That's their scope.
So what's the difference between the BCIN then and the architect?
So architects...
We should have probably had this conversation before, right?
No, this is good.
An architect essentially can work on any building classification, so anything larger than the 600 square meters, and any occupancy type, so assembly buildings like arenas, these larger buildings. BCIN designers have to work in smaller buildings, and they can't work in like stadiums, these larger kind of occupancies. So they're kind of limited to the types of buildings they can work on. But that being said, 600 square meters is a lot, right? Like I'd say it's roughly 6,000 square feet. So, a lot of the times they're working within the smaller, maybe retail spaces, and then like essentially all residential kind of buildings.
Okay, so it sounds like there's levels to this then.
Exactly.
Okay,
yes.
so what's the lowest level?
I would say BCIN would be the lowest level to provide your design services to other people. But actually, as a homeowner, you could submit permits for your own home. So that would technically be the lowest level, right?
How are you able to do that or get away? I don't know if it's called getting away with it, but you know what I mean? Like I can actually just go to the city, submit my own permits, do my own electrical.
Potentially, yes.
So you got to doodle, Gary, on the paper and draw it out.
So I've done my own electrical too.
Okay.
And that's a separate process.
But you're not an electrician.
No, but as a homeowner, you're allowed to do your own electrical.
Isn't that crazy?
Yes, I know.
Or is that just me?
Like, no, I think it is a little wild.
Let's clarify. We're talking about like just the drawings aspect.
No, I actually wired my own house.
Whoa,
but that's because you're legally allowed to as a homeowner.
Yeah, that's so interesting to me that I'm not an electrician, but I can do my own home. But if you hire me, I have to be an electrician?
Yes, exactly. You have to have a master's electrician license. And then you would, the licensed individual, you would take out the electrical permit. So that's why if you're dealing with any sketchy electricians that maybe not licensed, they'll be like, you as the homeowner, you take out the electrical permit and then I'll wire it for you. That's a red flag because that's probably that they don't have the license and they're trying to get you as the homeowner to pretend like you did it yourself.
That is interesting.
Yeah.
And what else can I do as a homeowner?
You could essentially like submit your own drawings yourself and then get it built yourself, which is pretty incredible.
Right.
Like in a way, like if you are willing to, educate yourself and be able to still meet building code, like everybody still needs to do that. Learn how to do the drawings and get it done. Yeah. I know some people that have done it and it's an amazing kind of thing. Like they love it, getting their hands dirty and building their own house.
Right. Yeah. So they can do it themselves. They can drywall, stud it, everything.
Yes. But
now what about now? Right. But what? Yeah. Oh, sorry. Hold on. So you need inspections or without?
You will be inspected.
Okay.
Though. Yeah.
Got it. Yeah. Okay. Now that's the most important.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. The city will still ensure that as the homeowner, you're making things like up to code.
Because then after you've done the electrical work, they've now got to come in and check the work that you've done. Okay. So that's it. You can't just close it all out.
No, not at all.
All right. Cool. All right. So you got BCIN. After that, then you've got what? Architect?
Well, there's an architectural technologist,
yeah,
and then that has its own certificate license. So there are some technologists that go to college, you get a diploma, and then you can write an exam. There's a bunch of education hours required for that. Then, that would be the second level, I would say.
And then is there a third or
and
a
then
fourth?
The third level would be architect. So in Canada, you need a master's degree in architecture with an accredited university. And then you need to work a certain number of hours working under a licensed architect. In Ontario, it's somebody that's licensed in Ontario. And then there's 4 exams and some courses that you have to take. That takes all, it can take you 8 to 10 years to get your full license. And then from then on, you can work under a practice. You can start your own practice. It's really up to you.
Okay. So, and then how far have you gotten?
I got my full license maybe, I think 2021. So I went through that full process.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, do you make lots of money?
I would say not from my practice. I think I probably make more money from real estate investing than anything.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. So the real estate, and when did you start investing in real estate?
I bought my first one with my sisters, essentially a joint venture in 2011. And then I bought my first on my own right after undergrad in 2015. So But I didn't really understand all these strategies that we talk about today, like the BRRRR strategy and like refinancing and kind of scaling. So I would say I only really started doing that in 2019 and kind of growing my portfolio.
All right.
Yeah.
Now, what jobs have you done? Which ones do you enjoy doing and which ones do you not like doing? Like, I'm sure you got, you know what I mean? Like, once you kind of lean more towards and you get a call and like, I don't know if I want to do this one. Or do you take them all on?
Yeah, I think it depends. Like, I think when it comes to the design end, I think that's the way I've kind of tried to think of it. Like, as an architect, there's like design related projects, and then those tend to be like higher end, luxury, higher budget, and those you can have fun with creatively. And then there's like the investor projects. They're not always, they're on a budget and they're kind of fun in their own way. Sometimes it's nice because you can really build a system behind it, and that's where it's nice as a business. For example, like duplex conversions, they're pretty straightforward. You're checking the same things every time. There's a very organized process to it. So that part is pretty straightforward, and that's kind of easy as a business to kind of keep working through. Right. So they're kind of nice for different kind of reasons.
Okay. Yeah. Why don't we talk about what we're currently working on?
Sure.
I know one of our clients has purchased a property in Toronto. They're in the midst of it. Mm-hmm. I think it'd be cool to kind of go through that process. Why don't you maybe kind of kick it off then, Q? Or
yeah, 100%. So just to give the listeners an overview, this is a downtown property in West Toronto, and it is a full gut job. So we'll be taken down to the studs, and Victoria will have the honors of sort of hearing the buyer's vision and implementing that. We talked briefly before we started, is it going to look like a triplex? Are we going to go 4 units? Mm-hmm. What are we going to do? So I think, correct me if I'm wrong, that's some of the exciting part, Victoria, where you get to bring the owner's vision to life, right? And add your creative aspect of it, the highest and best use, how to maximize space, based on what their goals are, right? Mm-hmm. Do you want to rent out all the units? Do you want to live in a unit, rent out this one? And how do you see that all coming together? And what do you enjoy most about this project?
Yeah, I think you touched on it already. I think that strategic aspect I really enjoy. I think I did a disc profile, one of those kind of personality tests, and it ended up being strategist. So I think that kind of aspect of always trying to think about what different plays do we have, what options do we have, and like integrating that with the client's vision and, presenting them with those options and understanding what their needs are. And then, taking it from there. But it's kind of exciting to kind of show that highest and best use, but then also like understanding what other possibilities there are too.
Yeah. And I think sometimes the tricky part is when you're looking at these properties in Toronto, you don't always know what you're looking at, mm-hmm. if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Because, let's say if I'm not an architect or I don't have my BCIN license, I take a look at this property and it's only got 1 parking spot. Well, I guess it's not going to work. Mm-hmm. But these things can work in Toronto. And I believe this property has a potential of going to how many units? Because it's only a single family home right now. Yeah. So how many units can we get out of this? Let's talk maybe a little bit about the parking, how many parking spots you need, even for if you can convert it to a 4 unit. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so specifically in this property, it already allows and is zoned to allow for a triplex or a fourplex. So that part is nice. Mm-hmm. And it's quite a good sized house. It's 3 levels and then a basement. So automatically, you're thinking, can each floor be its own unit potentially, right? I think what it's challenging off the bat when you're thinking about these larger conversions, I would say it's exiting, because ideally each unit has their own kind of dedicated entry. And then when you get into taller buildings, when it comes to the building code, you technically need 2 exits or an exit plus some sort of like second egress. So then the challenge is thinking about, can I get away without a second stair, or do I have to create one, and what implications does that have?
Right. Yeah. Let's touch on the parking then. So how many parking, mm-hmm. did we say that?
Oh, yeah, parking.
Yeah, how many?
I think this one already has 2. A parking pad on it.
Yeah.
And then...
did it have 2?
It's 1 legal parking pad. Mm-hmm. You can park 2 cars on there.
Right.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So I believe like that when it comes to secondary suites in Toronto, you don't need parking for that. It's when you introduce the 3rd unit and potentially the 4th unit that you may need additional parking. So that's something that we'll be looking into. You know, do we need 2 parking and can we officially fit that on the lot because there are designated sizes?
Right.
And then if we go for the 4 units, are we actually needing to apply for a parking variance in that case?
Got it. Okay. And the good thing with this particular property too is that the height in the basement was really good.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Because we were already at the more than 6.5 feet, I believe, down there.
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So right away, that's like the easiest check when it comes to can you convert this basement into apartments, like checking that ceiling height. So you need a minimum 6'8" minimum 6'8" and half or 50% of the floor. And then say under ductwork, you need a 6'5".
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'll be definitely exciting to kind of watch that project, take place.
For sure,
And the
yeah.
other cool thing that we plan on doing, because now we've also got the office down in Toronto for a brokerage. I think the game plan is to have some property tours. So investors, if you're listening and you want to see this project, I guess from beginning to end.
Yes, I know that'd be
Right.
exciting. We track the whole process. Right?
Yeah. I'm excited to see it, right? And I think it'll open up a lot of opportunities for a lot of investors who, are looking at converting single family homes into 2 or 3 units. And also too, why don't we touch on Build 23?
Sure.
Because, and I mean, like, I don't know, I haven't followed it along, maybe as close as I should. But I do know that there's changes that they're trying to push through. And I think a lot of it is actually trying to get rid of the red tape, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Totally.
Yeah. Touch on that.
So I would say I'm not like the premier expert when it comes to Build 23, but yeah, high level, it is trying to cut the red tape when it comes to getting affordable housing or additional units kind of completed. One of the best kind of things I saw out of it was the removal of site plan approval for units, I think 10 units and below. So that's incredible because site plan approval sometimes can take a year. And that's essentially, you're looking at a plan of what you're trying to, of the land you're trying to develop. And most times they just want to see what is the overall massing. You're not even considering the inside of the building yet. So just the footprint of the building, how does the landscaping and the parking work? And that's it. And that can take a year before you even go into the design and building permit. So imagine how much time an investor needs to hold a property to even get shovel ready. So they're kind of eliminating that pre-application, that initial process. So you can at least go to, say, building permit a lot quicker.
Okay.
And these are important issues that Victoria and I were talking about, boots on the ground that we see every day. Eliminate some of that red tape, product will get to the marketplace quicker, right? More investors, hey, let me jump in, because Victoria just alluded to it. I have to sit on a property for a year if I need a site plan approval in the past, that's money. Time is money, all right? So if these changes come, remove that red tape, this is how we can create more affordable housing.
Yes.
Right. Okay. So for a site plan approval, what about plumbing? How does that work? Because, somebody who's listening to this and maybe they're an environmentalist.
Sure.
Okay. And, you've got this neighborhood and this neighborhood was built to have X amount of people living in this home.
Yeah.
Now all of a sudden you say, hey, we're going to add 3 units or 4 units to this property. And let's say, you got 8 or 10 homes now that are doing this.
Sure.
What about plumbing?
Right.
How do, you got a lot of shit going down these pipes.
Yes.
How does that work?
Yeah, I think,
I'm not expecting you to know, but obviously that's something that you got to look into, right?
Sure. But I think in the overall scheme of things, 10 units is not too big of a jump in terms of density. And we're not talking about condos, really high rises. So I feel like when people in the community begin to speak like that, it's this idea of, the NIMBYism in the city, right? They're single family homeowners. They're trying to keep the status quo. They want things low density. Meanwhile, there's an influx of people coming to Toronto, and you have this weird divide of low density single family homes and condos, and a very limited in between. So I think what Bill 23 addresses is that middle ground. Can we increase the density without needing to just jump to condos.
Got it. Okay. And I mean, look, I guess if I flush my toilet and you flush your toilet, it's not really going to make that big a difference, will it? If you get a few more people on that street.
Yeah, and when it comes to when we're already doing these duplex conversions, we're already looking at like the plumbing, the servicing. We do calculate how many fixtures are in the house. Will we need to increase the water size? So that is kind of considered in a way already. But it does trigger like a larger, I guess, conversation with the city about infrastructure. Is if whole neighborhoods are being upgraded to 10 units, will they need to upgrade, say, city sewage and all of that? And that's probably already partially an issue in Toronto. You already see, pipes like busting in the streets and all of that. So, but I think it does speak to like a larger infrastructure conversation. Yeah,
for sure. What about hydro now and water meters? And I guess we can even go back to this property here. It's typical. Do you split the hydro for all these units? And also, what about water? Because that's obviously a question that we get from time to time. Can you split water? And are there some unique ways of doing that in the city?
Sure. I think hydro doesn't need to be separated when it comes to the smaller conversions, like by code. But a lot of times it's just more convenient. You can directly bill to the tenants. And if you're doing all these renovations already, like this is your chance to do it. So I think it's just naturally, easy thing for landlords to do, and they can recover a lot of the money when it comes to renting those units and then passing on that cost to the tenants. And then they're protecting their downside, right? Like if hydro costs go up and that's not integrated in, or if that's included in the rent, then they're kind of footing the bill. Versus hydro costs go up, the tenants are going to have to pay for that, right? Otherwise their hydro gets cut off, or I don't know what, I'm sure that may or may not happen, but right. that can be a challenge. And then for water, in terms of solutions there, I find if you are looking at splitting the water, you typically still have the one service line, but then you can have a solution where you're splitting the water to however many units are in the house, and then you can bill those tenants individually. So it's kind of, say you have the one pipe coming in, it splits into 4. At those points, you can measure how much usage is each unit using, and then bill appropriately.
Yeah, because that's on you, the owner. It's basically a reading, right?
Exactly.
Of the usage. So then it's not like the tenants, how they can put hydro in their own name. They're not going to put water in their own name. It's still the one service coming in.
Right. But so is it just like a device that you put on?
Yes, essentially. Yeah. There's different like water billing solutions, and they can like split the pipes, and then there's like a device that reads it. And then it could be sent to like your phone or computer, and then you can kind of send that off to your tenants.
That's cool. Yeah. Okay.
So they're not complaining Bob upstairs took all these hot showers every day, all day.
Yes, exactly. I've had that where you're like, okay, it's 2 units, we're roughly the same size. Let's just split it down the middle. But then they're like, oh yeah, Bob, uses the washer dryer all the time. I don't feel this is fair. And then, this a lengthy conversation you may not want to have, right?
Yeah. Are there any new things coming down the pipeline that you've seen? I know we were talking, I think, briefly about ChatGPT.
Right.
Have you been using that to your advantage with your builds and what you do?
Not with the builds necessarily, maybe with social media content, right? Like generating ideas or even like the descriptions of things. I feel like it's a great tool to get you started. It doesn't always capture your voice, or it doesn't always capture everything you want to say. But, if you find yourself stuck and you're just looking for ideas, I feel like it's a great place to start.
Okay. But you haven't used it like for designs or ideas or anything like that in what you do?
No, not ChatGPT specifically. And I haven't integrated any of these AI tools yet, but there is one I've been meaning to try. It's called Midjourney. And you essentially can type in a bunch of words, like say modern interior architecture or something, or a bunch of words, and then it'll spit out an image that begins to speak to what you've described, and you can iterate on that. So you kind of give it more. You're like, okay, like I want to add some, I don't know, like a cool roof, or you kind of begin to describe that, and then it'll kind of change accordingly. So it's pretty interesting, the tools that are coming out not only like ChatGPT with words, but even like imagery and the kind of things that they're developing there.
Okay. What do you see some of the big mistakes that a lot of investors make when they're purchasing a property, and they're trying to convert it? Are you usually brought in like at the end or afterwards? Or
I've had some of that. Yeah. Like I think I don't know if it's a mistake they've made, and I try not to get too much in the weeds of it, but that's definitely like if they've say renovated the duplex, triplex, whatever, and it's fully finished, and then I'm brought in after the fact, oftentimes because they've been given a work order. That part is like so challenging. Like and I don't know if it's a mistake that they like deliberately made, like they could have just done it all with permits and, avoided this issue, or if they kind of purchased it and it wasn't legal to begin with. But I would say that would be probably a mistake if you had the opportunity to do things with permits, do it properly, and you didn't, then it's really hard to course correct after, and you're at the mercy of the inspector and trying to fulfill what they want to see.
Right. And when you say work order, you're talking about when the neighbor calls on you?
Essentially, yeah. Yeah, like the neighbor, they call you, or they call the city on you, and then the city's like, oh, I don't see in my records that there's multiple units here, and then they give you like a notice like of corrections that you need to make, essentially.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So if you guys are going to do that, make sure you bring your drywall and your 2x4s in at nighttime.
Yeah, or like be nice to your neighbors. Really.
Good rapport.
Most of the times it's from the neighbors reporting. Like we always talk about, there's such a shortage of housing, which is true. That's why for the most part the cities aren't coming in and like knocking on doors unless there are some sort of complaints, or like say a fire broke out and they're like, okay, like what's going on here? Oh, there's all these illegal units, right? So there's some sort of trigger for them to come in and investigate. So yeah, generally I'd say like be nice to your neighbors, especially if you have something like that going on, because it's a simple call and then it's a big headache.
Yeah. What do you see some of the big things that are coming down the pipeline that may pose challenges to what you do? Like, like since we've been doing this now, Quentin, we've seen things like, interconnected smoke alarms and inline smoke detectors in the furnaces. Like those things weren't around, back in 2013, 2014. Do you see new things come? I mean, it's always going to be changing, but is there anything that you see right now in the pipeline where you're like, man, this is going to be a challenge?
Not when it comes to maybe building code. Like it's funny, the building code we're referring to is still 2012, and then they've had all these amendments going on. I think
so they're just amending from 2012.
Yeah, and I think it's a political thing. I think they've been supposed to be issuing a new building code, but they haven't. So maybe if they finally do issue like a new code and there's kind of new things that come out of that, there could be potentially. But I would say when it comes to the building industry and building code, it's pretty slow moving. So I don't foresee anything like that, affecting the way we do things now, like to a high degree.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's touch on, Victoria, what you're seeing. We know affordable housing is the buzzword in today's day and age. Is that making you look at some of the units? Let's stay on the investor based and saying, okay, maybe more, let's call them adults, have to rent together just because of affordability. So would you be like maybe suggesting to clients, okay, let's build a couple en suites in each of these bedrooms, because if you have two adults, renting together, they might feel, more comfortable having their own bathroom, or any of that affecting the designs that you're creating?
Yeah, I think like it ultimately comes to what the client intends. Like I think it's nice for them to think about like who is their ideal tenant profile, because you would naturally design differently, right? Like if it is for say students, or you imagine renting it room by room, I know investors that want a layout like that, where you're maybe limiting the size of the living space. Maybe you're keeping it to the minimum code, and then you're keeping the rooms good sizes. They each have their own ensuite, just because you imagine naturally they're each going to just stay in their bedrooms for the most part. And then that's more of a model where you imagine renting it room by room versus you'll probably design a suite differently. If it's for a young family, they'll probably want good sized bedrooms, good living space, dining space, kitchen. So you will allocate more space for those other areas and not just bedrooms. So I think it always starts with like, who do you intend to occupy this space and how do we optimize the design to cater to those people?
Right. I think we're seeing some more threes companies, come back where they got to combine, right?
Yeah,
so
but
it's interesting to see that dynamic.
Yeah, it's funny you say that though, because, it does shift towards more like rooming house model, student housing. In the US, there's a lot more talk, at least in the investor space, of like co-living, which in my opinion is almost like rebranded rooming house. Like it's a bunch of adults living together, almost rented room by room, and they're just optimizing for the number of bedrooms.
Right. Yeah.
What about like after, we've put an offer in and now you've got that 60 days or 90 days before that property closes?
Yes.
Are there things that investor can do to maybe help speed up that process before closing?
Yeah, for sure. So one of the key things, if you have a good relationship with the seller, is if you have a designer or architect already on board, I always try to get an authorization letter to authorize your architect or designer to get that process started sooner if possible. So in that way, you can submit your permits before you you actually own the home. So that part is nice. And then like trying to get as many visits as possible, whether it's to measure the house, again, get started on the drawings, or to get a general contractor or multiple general contractors to begin to get familiar with your project, give you some quotes. So it's all that preparation that you can ideally do in that due diligence period. And then hopefully in an ideal world, day one, you can have like, the construction process started.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you find that the seller gets nervous though? Because sometimes it's difficult having that conversation with them saying, hey, look, I need you to sign this it's an authorization form, essentially saying that they're signing for you to start the process to convert this or do whatever you're going to do with the property.
Yes. So I think for this project, I've been surprised like how easy it's been for your team to be like, oh, here's your authorization. It's like, wow, that's incredibly quick. I don't know how you did it. It's like magic, but
oh, you don't know the tactics we used.
Well, and you know what it is, Gary? Part of that is clear communication. So even when we were negotiating the offer, we sort of set these expectations. So it wasn't like, oh, by the way, let's introduce you to these authorization letters, right? I introduced that early in the process. So the communication was clear. The expectations were set, right?
Yeah.
So I think you do it early when people get all shook and scared when unexpected things come up. Right. So I think clear communication from the beginning. Right.
And this is where it's really important to work with realtors who understand this, to be able to have those very, you can say it's difficult conversations, but to make it digestible, to not to take out the fear.
Yes.
And I think that's usually what it is, because now that seller's asking questions, and then that agent who isn't knowledgeable or experienced, like, I don't know, and gets a little nervous. Let me go back. And now all of a sudden you're like, well, hold on a second. The seller's like, I don't want to get myself involved with this because I don't feel real comfortable with signing these papers. And you're not too sure, but it's other agents telling you that it's okay.
Yes.
Forget it.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think you guys did a great job. And it's true. Sometimes, I'm just telling you, like, I need this letter signed. I'm going to get started my drawings. And then, from the seller's perspective, they're like, I don't know what that means. This sounds weird. I don't want to sign this. Like, signing things that you don't understand is probably always a bad idea. So, you and your team made them feel comfortable and understand that process. And then on top of that, sometimes we come in measuring and we have this like 3D camera, and then they're like, oh, this device, like, what is it? It's strange. Like, it scares them on top of that. So then again, you have to ease their mind and say like, okay, no, like, we're doing things for a specific purpose, and we don't have bad intentions.
Right. Well, what do they think is going to happen with this device, this 3D device?
It's going to blow up their house before it closes, man.
Yeah, they think they're getting scanned, I guess.
Yeah, they think like robots are going to take over the world, or they're like, what are they scanning? I don't know. I went to an airport, and it wasn't even the people screening me. I didn't even need to check in. I just put my passport in, and it was just this robot that scanned my whole body, and they could tell what height I was. And that was, even for me, I was like, this is super weird. Living in a world where it's just robots.
Right. So. Yeah. Technology is going very fast.
Oh yeah.
It's incredible how fast it is. Have you heard of Jeff Booth?
Yes.
It's incredible. Have you read that book? Have you heard of it, Q? Mm-hmm. Really interesting concept.
Right. I haven't read the book yet. No.
Yeah, I haven't read it. I've listened to some of the podcasts that he's been on. It's very, very interesting. I want to go back. I should read the book. Yeah. But anyway, sorry, I just went a little tangent there.
It's basically, the advancements in technology should ease costs and bring everything down, right? They're advancements, but I don't know how that.
Well, that's the whole concept of it. The book, right, is about deflation.
Yeah.
And how it should be going that way.
Yeah.
But yet we live in this inflation world where they keep printing money.
That's the only way it's going to keep working, right?
Yeah.
I think
a
we're
concept,
just stuck.
right, compared to the institution, right? So it's interesting.
Yeah. So what projects are you working on right now outside of ours? Are there any other ones that you're working on, and any challenges or anything really interesting that you can share?
Like a lot of conversions, kind of the typical duplex, triplexes. What's an interesting? A single family to, I think, 7 units. So we're working on adding an addition at the back, and then I think there's going to be 5 units in the addition, and then 2 units out of that main house. So that's going through a minor variance process, and then it seems successful based on our initial conversations with the city, and then hopefully go through the build. So that's an interesting one.
I think when people hear minor variance, it sounds minor, but what is it? And it sounds scary, I think, sometimes, though, right? Like the wording doesn't sound scary. But if you understand it, now you're going to the city and saying, hey, look, I need to do something outside the norm.
Yes.
How difficult is that whole entire process?
It depends on the ask, really. So you can imagine, here's the rules, and you want to break the rules. How much are you asking to break the rules? So you kind of getting in that negotiation with them and understanding what does the city deem as minor at the end of the day. The actual definition of it is, I think it's a minor in nature. So they don't even really define what does that mean? So I think it's going to the city, understanding what their interpretation of it is, so that you're kind of, again, negotiating, maybe you'll ask for a little bit more than what they give, and maybe you meet in the middle. But it is a little nerve-wracking for most people, just because that's where you begin to involve your neighbors, and other people can begin to have a say in your project. And if you don't have the best relationships, you don't know what to expect, then that is a risk.
Right. Your neighbors. How wide of a range are we talking about when we talk about neighbors? There is a set.
Yeah, there's a radius. Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. I think they usually send letters, people within 100 meter radius. But I don't know that off the top of my head. But usually it's a certain radius that begin to comment on your application. You get a letter in the mail. They tell you when this committee meeting is, and you are welcome to, voice your opinion, whether it's good or bad.
Right. Are you involved in that?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So I don't have to go. You just go.
Exactly. You can go, but these days it's all on Zoom, and typically they only have one person allowed to speak to represent that file. And it's either a planner or your architect or designer that essentially represents you at the committee meeting.
Do you find that a lot of people are showing up to some of these meetings? I mean, obviously depending on the ask or the request, but have you ever had pushback where there's so many people that just show up?
Like the whole neighborhood, you mean? Yeah, we're going tonight, Gary. We're going to fight Frank over there.
That's right. Yeah, they got their picket signs and on Zoom.
Yes, it's more often than not. Yes, it's kind of funny. Like you don't always know what to expect. I think if you're going into one, it is good to knock on doors, say like, "Hey, this is what I'm proposing to do." Have that conversation, and sometimes it's a simple, "Oh, I'm concerned about the noise," and then you can have that conversation with them. They're like, "Oh, okay, what can I do to?" ease those concerns. Can I build a fence? Would that be okay? And they're like, okay, yeah, I'm fine with that. And then they don't show up, right? So I think having those conversations are good, but I've definitely been in meetings where it's the neighbors and they a lot of times they complain about things that aren't even relevant because they may not be even say educated on, what is or isn't the topic at hand. But even had business owners and people kind of commenting on projects that were in a downtown area and they were voicing opinion. Like I had a business improvement area association kind of opposing one of our applications. And
right.
Yeah, so it really can, people can go up in arms and kind of be against some of your applications.
I think that's just human nature, right? Like you're scared of what you don't know.
Yes.
Or you're scared sometimes of just change, right?
Yeah.
You're like, I don't know if I want this coming into my neighborhood.
Exactly.
Right?
Oh, yeah, especially people that have been there 50 years, right? This is my neighborhood, my street, right?
Yeah, for sure.
It can get intense.
Yeah. What about working with like the contractors and all the other trades that you've got to bring in? How difficult is that? And do you usually recommend contractors or do you just allow your clients to pick who they want? And who else is involved in that? So you get your contractors, You've got you, and is anybody else?
Yeah, like I think this is often not fully clear, like in terms of like roles and responsibilities. So it's kind of probably a good conversation to have in that, like as an architect, typically you're actually on board for not only the design, but into construction and this process called contract administration. And typically in the construction phase, that's where like an architect can review, make sure that the design intent is adhered to. And the designer and architect can be involved in like the bidding process. I guess it depends on like the full scope of services. Like what have you hired your architect to do? Are they only bringing you to building permit and then you're kind of hands off and on your own? Or are they bringing you through bidding and then through to contract administration, kind of helping you during the construction process? I find with a lot of people in the investor space, they're happy with, you got my permit, great, I'll take it from here. But with a larger projects, especially with more liability, we'll be, there for the full process, helping them bid. So usually it's an invited bid. So we have a couple of contractors that we can recommend based on experience, and we can say like they do good work from what we know, and from there you can get a couple prices and then choose from there. But you can also, if you have contacts, kind of invite some of your own. But there are other kind of ways to do that process as well. If you have a good relationship, you can bring your contractor on board much earlier, be integrated in the design process. They can even give suggestions on cost savings based on their construction knowledge. And then they're kind of into construction. The problem or challenge with that is a lot of people don't want to maybe tie themselves down to a contractor too early on, and they want to get a couple prices. They feel like it might be more competitive. The downside to that is it might not be a fully integrated design with your contractor. So in the end, you design something, the classic solutions like your architect, they design something beautiful and then it's too expensive, and then you kind of bid it out and it's like out of your budget range. And then you kind of have to go after like backwards and redesign. So I think there's a couple of different ways to do it, but typically I would say it's an invited bid process.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you ever see the investor or even the homeowner be the GC or like the general contractor? And do you ever see it turn out good? That's the more important question.
Yes, 100%.
I don't think I've actually worked with an investor that has tried to GC their own project. I generally wouldn't recommend it because somewhat of a steep learning curve. And even if you're good at it, do you have enough projects that they're kind of giving you the best timelines, like all the subtrades, right? Because a lot of times the plumber, they're getting a ton of jobs from general contractors. They're going to prioritize them, right? So unless you're consistently giving these guys a lot of work, they might just fit you in between. And that's going to cause delays. And are you really saving money if your timeline is like double?
100%. And the big issue is, let's say, for example, the plumber comes in, then you get the drywaller comes in. And it's like, well, why did the plumber level or do it like this? And then the guy comes in to put the subfloor in. You get a guy that's going to come in tiles. Like, why would you put the subfloor like this? They get it. Like, it can be a complete disaster. And you're also saying too, I think that makes a lot of sense, that the timeline just gets extended, because now they're like, well, I can come in on this particular date, which is like 3 weeks or a month or 6 weeks down the road.
Yes.
Where if you just have the GC, you got one person to yell at.
Exactly.
Yeah. And back to Victoria's point, it's ideal to have that contractor and the designer together at the beginning, because you're going to save money in the long run, because you're going to give your suggestions and the contractor said, yeah, that's a great idea. Oh, we're going to relocate the furnace here because it will maximize the space here, right? And if that's all done up front, it's a lot easier. Get it right the first time than, Victoria, can you change these drawings? Yeah, we're going to move this. The contractor suggested this, and time is money, right?
Exactly.
Every change delays the process as well.
Yeah, I'd agree. So, I think as an investor, if you have like a really great contractor, sometimes I would even suggest like, don't even put it out to bid. Like, they give you a fair price. It's maybe not the cheapest, but they're fair and they do good work. Like maybe don't even bid it out, and then just have them integrated within your team. And then they're part of the process. Again, they can share some of those cost savings integrated with the design. And then the process is a lot faster, smoother, potentially cheaper. And you don't need to bother like waiting on estimates from like 3 different people.
Yeah, for sure. Any other questions on that stuff, Q?
Not really. On a question from maybe an inventory standpoint, do you find homeowners maybe more apt to renovate their house now instead of selling and buying something else they might want? Because inventory is still an issue, right? And that's some of the stuff we've seen the market in the last 3-4 weeks, pick up a little steam because we have not solved the supply issue, right? And the inventory hasn't sprung onto the market yet.
Yeah, and we're seeing multiple offers right now. And just a time for a time. What are we at? March 14th?
Yes.
Right. Okay. So.
Yeah, I think I find a lot of homeowners are looking to renovate just because with inventory, the fully renovated properties are just flying off the shelf. And then the ones left over, you have to renovate anyways. Do you want to move and then do that? Like, I think might as well stay and then kind of make it your own. And then even the ones that are renovated, are they renovated to your taste or your wants and needs? So, if it's 50% there, then they're kind of questioning, like, should I just stay and just do it exactly how I want it to be? So I find a lot of people are just choosing to stay and kind of making it their own.
Yeah. Okay. Why is design education important to you?
Right. Yeah, like I think it's funny, like in working with investors and coming from the other side and like and being an architect, there's a lot of things I feel like investors can do on their own or by educating the general public. I feel like architecture and the design education that I've had could really help other people a lot more than I can do myself.
Okay. And so you're teaching people now in this aspect, or is it just like, what are you doing with this? Yeah,
like I teach at university and college, teaching architecture, interior design, and I'm looking to build a course to help investors with a lot of the questions that I get like on a day-to-day basis. And I think it's just not feasible sometimes to pick up the phone and have that conversation with them. So, being able to kind of package that all together and be like, you have some of the same questions I've had with like 10 other investors. So like, here you go. Here's like, a boot camp into like, how do you find like a duplex, triplex, fourplex? How do you identify those opportunities? How do you look at the zoning? How do you identify key things in the building code? And then that will arm you with the knowledge to begin to understand at least how to navigate this process, so you don't fall into a building that you can't convert or that kind of thing.
Right. Is there more money in this?
Well, like maybe I think like right now as an architect, it's a very service-based business. So in a way, you're trading your time for money. So in building a course, it's almost like productizing that service. And again, like thinking about what are certain things that I am doing over and over again, and can I just package that, and then it's more efficient.
Right. Yeah, and sell it. And so I mean, you could teach it online, but then also package it so that we're now it's been recorded, essentially is what you're saying, and now people can find your website and just buy it and listen to it on their own time.
Yes, exactly. So it's really based out of probably like the service business I have. And then if I'm getting the same questions over and over again, then I can begin to package that as a product and then sell that. So naturally they work together, and I imagine I could continue to build more courses and content based on the things that clients are asking me to do.
Right. So, but right now, though, you're teaching that you said at the university.
Oh, yeah. That's, I guess, something entirely separate. Too,
right. Exactly. So you're doing that, but then you're also looking at, but it hasn't been created yet, though.
No. So I'm working on it as we speak, but trying to balance, the business and investing and still like recording and kind of editing, right? So there's a lot.
Being an entrepreneur is a lot of work, is it not?
It is, but I love it because I love doing these different things, like I was never the type to just do the same task, sit at my desk. Like I love working on like 3-5 different things at once. It like gives me more energy to do more things in a different way.
It is an interesting thing, is it not? Like the more creative you are, it allows your mind to work through these different challenges and come up with solutions. And it's like, this is what I created.
Yes.
This is cool.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's like the creative energy from one thing kind of fuels the other.
Yeah, because you never reach a level of, I know it all. I'm good. And I'm coasting through life now, right? That's the great thing about it, right?
Well, we were just talking about this earlier before we started. I was like, I can't believe I'm still making these mistakes. So like, I'm always like, it's just like, man, I'm just like, okay, I want to stop. But I just, because I'm always trying new things. And even if I'm not trying new things, it's just things always just happen.
Yes.
And you're like, okay, as opposed to saying, why me? It's like, what can I learn from this?
Exactly. Yeah. And always reminding yourself like those challenges are opportunities to continue to learn. So I think I definitely have those moments too, but then like taking a step back and be like, no, this is good because it's a sign that I'm learning something new.
Yeah.
Now, Victoria, what is in your future for your investing? What projects are you looking into? What do you want to tackle? Any creative things you're looking to do for your personal portfolio right now?
Yeah, like I'm personally interested in diving into some larger projects. Like I'd love to go more into the real estate development space, right? Taking some land, maybe going through site plan approval, getting that, maybe even building. I think, just the full process really excites me. So I think for me, it's always been, it's real estate development is capital intensive. I always had the mindset of, I don't know, I don't have that kind of money. I don't know if I can do that. But I think part of educating myself in being in the real estate investment world, a lot of it is mindset, right? It's not about like, how can I do this myself? I don't have this money, but like, how do I put together a team of individuals so we can do it together? So I think it's less about the like me doing it all myself and like, how can I find others that can help me achieve it?
Not the how, who.
Yeah, so who exactly, who, not how. Yes.
I haven't even read the book, but the title itself tells you exactly.
Exactly. Find the who's. Yes, exactly.
Okay, good. I can read another book now.
Great book, though. Yes.
Have you read it?
Yes, I have. Yeah. I think that was like a game changer. I think about it because I don't know, as a person that was like very much, you get a good education and you're kind of doing everything on your own. Then. Just like, no, like I almost had this mindset of like, you're lazy if you didn't do all yourself. So it was almost the opposite mentality rather than like, how do I build a team or who do I kind of find to help me? So I think that kind of reframing how you kind of saw that was important. And that was like a good kind of lesson out of that book.
Yeah. What books have changed your life? I mean, that's obviously one of them, but what else?
Oh, that's one of my favorites, I would say. a slight edge. I think a key lesson there I thought was interesting is just, there's this one line I remember, it's just like, so easy to do, so easy not to do.
Yes.
And then whenever I don't want to do something, I just like think about that line in the book. And it's like, it's so true, because it's really those like incremental steps that get you to like those further positions. But when you don't want to do something, it's really like, just like, you don't want to go to the gym. Well, why don't you just go for 15, 20, 30 minutes and you do that consistently, and that will get you farther, right? So it's just kind of that line in the book just kind of allowed me to think like, well, it's tough right now, but like, what is the one thing, at least even a little thing that I could do to help me kind of push forward?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. You know, I remember listening to this one podcast, and the guy's like, why don't you just do micro workouts? Like, micro workouts. Says, yeah, just do like 2 push-ups.
Yeah.
And then when you get down, you do 2. You're like, well, I'm down here.
Yes. Exactly.
That's
Yes.
it, right? It's just getting started, right?
Yeah.
Because they know once you do 2, you're going to be like, I'm not a punk. I can do more than 2.
Right, exactly. Yeah, but it allows you to start, right? And it's even along the lines of, you know, if you think you can or you can't, you're right, right? And that's what's so true about this game of real estate investing. That it's not so much the technical things that are important; it's the mindset. The mindset's way more important than understanding the technicalities, right?
Exactly.
It's about having the right people on your team. And listen, man, that's one of the reasons why I've been able to do what I've been able to do, is to surround myself with the right people, as opposed to thinking, okay, I got to do it all. Exactly. And I think that's what stops and slows some people down, is thinking that, man, it's too complicated, or there's so many different strategies, or it's like, it's just like, slow it down and pick, you know, get involved with the right people and the right team.
Well, that's why we do what we do, right? Because we've been in that boat, like, oh, this is overwhelming. How am I going to tackle all this? And that's why we do what we do, right? To avoid some of those big obstacles that people feel they need to conquer. Well, no, you have a team here behind you.
For sure. Yeah. Team and the community, like, I think is huge in that, you know, whether things are going well and you're just trying to grow and find people that can help you, or if things aren't going so well, but you have people to lean on and like they can help you along the way. I think community has been huge, and, you know, putting yourself in an environment where, you know, you're going to excel and being around the people that are doing the things you want to do. I think those have been like the best decisions in my life. Yeah, for sure.
Victoria, I've enjoyed this conversation.
Yes, me too.
Yeah, it's been really good. I've learned a lot. I understand now the difference between BCIN and architect and engineer. That was my learning lesson for the day. Anything else you want to talk on or touch on before we wrap it up?
No, I guess it's like, if anybody's interested in doing some of the conversion projects that, you know, we talked about today, and want to learn more, come out to our event or the tour that we're going to do very soon. And I guess we'll subscribe. You can subscribe to my newsletter. I guess we'll share my website and some of those links that people can help. Like, if they have a project in mind, they can get in touch. Otherwise, just kind of keep up to date with some of the things we're working on. Yeah,
I got all your links here, so we'll put that all in the show note below. But I'm looking forward to the property tour. I think that'll be fun.
Yes,
I think it'll be educational. And I think one of the things we'll do first is obviously meet at the Toronto office. You'll do maybe like a little presentation.
Do a small presentation.
Get people familiar with what you do and how you do it, and then we'll go out, take a look at that property. That
boots on the ground.
100% boots on the ground is important. And then maybe what we'll do as well too is you'll look for a property that you think might be suitable as well too, that's on the market, and then we can go take a look at that too.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
So, you know, begin to imagine the possibilities and begin to imagine what it could turn into, so we can kind of walk through it and experience it firsthand.
Yeah. Awesome. I'm excited. Victoria, thank you very much. Q. It's been a blast, as always.
As always.
Yes.
And Victoria, nice to meet you in person. I know we communicated a lot. This is the first time we met, so great to meet you in person today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Great to be in the office.
Yes, awesome. All right. Guys, I will talk to you next week. Today's show is brought to you by BM Select. Are you looking to become a millionaire through real estate investing? If the answer is yes, and it should be, then BM Select is for you. BM Select has created more real estate millionaires in the past 15 years than any other mortgage brokerage in Canada. They create strategies that allow investors to grow their portfolio and have a unique way of helping clients navigate through the different banks and lending options available. Contact them today for a free consultation and get started on what could be a life-changing journey.
Thanks for listening to today's show with Gary Hibbert. Please don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and connect with your host on Instagram at Gary Hibbert. Until next time, stay mindful and remember, you don't have to be great to start. Just start, and you'll be on the path to being great.